My husband disappeared 3 years ago. Every single month, I sent $600 to his parents to pay off a debt he left behind. Then one afternoon, the little girl from next door said something that made my whole world stop. She was maybe 7 years old, gap-toothed and loud the way happy kids always are, and she said it so casually, like she was telling me what she had for lunch. "Miss Sandra, I saw your husband at Grandma Dot's house last Saturday." Then she skipped away to catch her dog. I stood in my driveway for a full minute before I could make my legs work again. My name is Sandra. I am 39 years old, and I work the night shift as a registered nurse at a hospital in Houston. 3 years ago, my husband went to Dallas for a business conference and never came home. The police told me his rental car was found at the bottom of a ravine off I-45, 60 miles outside the city. There was no body. They said the current of the flooding creek had likely carried it downstream. After 4 months of searching, they closed the active investigation and issued a presumptive death certificate. His mother called me the same week the certificate arrived. She was composed in a way that felt rehearsed, and she told me that Derek had borrowed $42,000 from them over the years, money for his business ventures, money they had pulled from their retirement account. She said she did not want to burden me, but that she and my father-in-law were old and had nothing left, and that Derek would have wanted me to honor his obligation. I was still sleeping in my car in the hospital parking lot during my lunch breaks because I couldn't stop crying long enough to drive home safely. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I loved Derek. I believed that paying his debt was the last way I could still take care of him. $600 a month. I drove it to them in cash on the 1st of every month, all the way to their house in Rosenberg, 40 minutes southwest of the city. My daughter Imani was 4 years old. I worked doubles every other weekend to cover it. I stopped getting my hair done. I canceled the family phone plan and went prepaid. $600 is not nothing when you are raising a child alone. 3 years. 36 payments. The balance was supposed to clear in 2 more months. And then a 7-year-old girl told me she saw my dead husband. The girl's name was Destiny, and she belonged to the family 3 houses down. Her grandmother, Miss Dorothy, everyone called her Grandma Dot, lived 2 streets over from my in-laws in Rosenberg. I had met Grandma Dot at a neighborhood cookout years ago. She and my mother-in-law moved in different circles but knew each other the way people in small communities always do. I did not run inside and call the police. I did not scream. I sat down on my front steps and I thought carefully, the way you learn to think when you have spent 3 years making decisions alone. Then I called my cousin Renee. Renee is 44 and works in insurance fraud investigation. She is the kind of woman who notices the expiration date on milk before she even picks it up. I had not told her about the payments to my in-laws because I had not told anyone. I was ashamed of how much I needed to believe I was doing the right thing. "I need to ask you something and I need you not to react until I finish," I said. I told her everything. The accident, the presumptive death certificate, the debt, the 36 payments, Destiny's words. There was a long silence on her end. "Sandra." Her voice was slow and careful. "Has a lawyer ever reviewed that death certificate?" I said no. "Has anyone besides your mother-in-law ever asked you for that money? Was there a written agreement? Anything signed?" "No, and no." "Okay." I heard her exhale. "Don't make the payment next month. Don't call them. Don't change anything else about your routine. And I need you to think hard, does Derek have any friends you lost touch with after the accident? Someone who might still be in contact with that family?" His best friend from college, a man named Terrence. He had come to the memorial service, held my hand during the prayer, and then vanished from my life the same way everyone eventually did. I had assumed he was grieving in his own way. Terrence and Derek had been inseparable since freshman year at Texas Southern. "Find Terrence," Renee said. I found him in 20 minutes. His Instagram was public. He posted constantly gym selfies, cookouts, trips. I scrolled back 3 months, and my chest tightened. There was a photo of Terrence at what looked like a birthday party, laughing, holding a red cup. On his wrist was a watch with a brown leather band and a champagne-colored face. I knew that watch. I had given it to Derek for our 5th anniversary. I had it engraved on the back with a small cross and the year. People give away belongings of people who die. That happens. Families distribute things. It does not mean anything on its own. but I zoomed in on the photo until the image blurred, and I could see the small crack in the leather band near the second loop, the one Derek had made by catching it on a car door, the one he kept saying he would fix, and never did. That crack was not something you could replicate. That crack had a history. I screenshot it and sent it to Renee without a word. She called me back in 3 minutes. He posted that 11 weeks ago. Do you know where that party was? I did not, but Renee did. She found the location tag hidden in a comment someone else left on the photo. A bar in Sugar Land. Sugar Land is 20 minutes from Rosenberg. I put Imani to bed that night, and I sat at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning. I got out the folder where I kept all the paperwork from the accident, the police report, the presumptive death certificate, the letter from the conference hotel confirming Derek had checked in but never checked out. I had read these documents so many times in the first year that I had memorized them, but I had never questioned them the way Renee was asking me to now. The police report listed the investigating officer as a deputy in a county I had never been to. I had spoken to him once by phone, and he had been kind but brief. The certificate had been processed through a probate court. Everything looked official. Everything looked real. But a presumptive death certificate is not the same as a confirmed death. I knew that now in a way I had not allowed myself to know it before. The next morning, I called the county sheriff's office, where the accident had been investigated. I told them I was following up on the case. The woman who answered was polite and pulled the file. She told me the car had been recovered, total loss, submerged. No remains had ever been found. The case was listed as presumptive. Standard procedure after the search period, she said. It happens more than people think, especially with water. Was there ever a formal identification made, I asked, of any physical evidence linking my husband specifically to that vehicle beyond the rental agreement? A pause. The sound of papers. The rental agreement and his ID were recovered in the glove compartment, she said. His phone was found on the embankment. His phone was outside the car? Another pause. That's what the report shows, yes. I thanked her and hung up. A man going off a road in a flooding creek does not typically lose his phone on the embankment while his ID stays dry in the glove box. I am a nurse. I understand how bodies and objects move in emergencies. That detail had never registered because I had been too destroyed to read carefully. I called Renee back. She came over that Saturday while Imani was at my mother's house. She brought her laptop and a legal pad, and we sat at my kitchen table for 4 hours. Renee had pulled everything she could access through her professional databases. Derek had no death benefit paid out through any life insurance. I had known that. The policies had lapsed after he stopped paying premiums 2 years before the accident, which I had discovered only after he was gone and which I had filed away as another wound from a marriage I was still learning, had been struggling in ways I had not fully seen. What Renee found was something else. A business registration in the name of a company called DRK Solutions LLC, filed in Harris County 8 months after Derek's presumptive death certificate was issued. The registered agent was listed as a property management company. The owner on record was a name I did not recognize, but the business address was a commercial unit in Sugar Land, the same city where Terrence had been photographed at a party. That doesn't prove anything, I said, because I needed to say it out loud before I let myself believe what I was already beginning to believe. No, Renee agreed, but it's enough to look harder. She had to contact a man named Gerald who did private investigation work and owed her a favor from a case years back. She called him while I sat across from her and watched her face stay perfectly neutral the way professionals do when they are delivering information that would break a civilian. Gerald agreed to do a basic surveillance pass of the business address in Sugar Land. 3 days later, he sent Renee a series of photos taken from a parked car across the street. The third photo made me grip the edge of the table. A man coming out of the building's side entrance. He was heavier than I remembered, with a beard grown out thick, and he was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low. But his walk was the same. The way he led slightly with his right shoulder, the way his head dipped a little when he stepped off a curb. I had watched that walk come through my front door 1,000 times. I had watched it cross hospital parking lots when Derek used to pick me up from shifts. I had watched it carry our daughter to bed when she was small enough to carry. I had been paying that man $600 a month for 3 years. I did not cry. I had used up crying. What I felt instead was a cold, clarifying anger, the kind that does not burn hot and fast but settles in like a stone and stays. I told Renee I wanted to confront him. She told me I was not going to do that. "You confront him," he runs, she said. "He has clearly been planning this for a long time. He has infrastructure. He has someone, probably Terrence, helping him maintain it. If you walk up to that building, he is on a plane to somewhere with no extradition treaty before you get back to your car. Then what do? You get a lawyer, you get one today, and you take everything we have to them before you do anything else." I found a family law attorney through the Texas State Bar referral line. Her name was Patricia, and she was 60 years old and had the kind of stillness that comes from having seen everything. I laid it all out in her office that Tuesday: the payments, the death certificate, the business registration, Gerald's photographs, the watch, Destiny's words, everything. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "If your husband is alive and allowed a presumptive death certificate to stand while collecting benefits from your continued belief in his death, that is fraud," she said. "The debt repayment arrangement, without a written agreement and predicated on a fraudulent premise, is also actionable. What I want to know is whether his parents were knowingly involved." I thought about my mother-in-law's voice on the phone the week the certificate arrived. Composed, rehearsed. "Yes," I said. "I believe they were." "Then we need one more thing," Patricia said. "We need to confirm identity definitively, and we need him to say something on record that demonstrates awareness. The photographs alone could be challenged. A defense attorney could argue resemblance, poor image quality. We need his voice." Gerald arranged it. He was careful and professional, and I will not describe every detail of what followed because some of it involved methods I am not entirely comfortable explaining. What I will say is that 2 weeks after my meeting with Patricia, Gerald gave me an audio recording made outside the Sugarland building. In it, a man's voice, Derek's voice, a voice I had heard say my name and my daughter's name and every ordinary word of a shared life, was speaking to Terrence about a timeline. "My folks collect 2 more payments, and then I'm done with that chapter," he said. "Sandra's not going to come looking. She never came looking." Terrence said something low I could not make out. "She thinks I'm dead. She's been telling herself whatever she needs to tell herself for 3 years. People do that. They find a story that hurts less, and they stick with it." I sat in Gerald's office and I listened to that recording 3 times, not because I needed to hear it more than once to understand, but because I needed to feel the full weight of it before I decided what I was going to do with it. I had spent 3 years grieving a man who was listening to me grieve from somewhere with good cell reception and a functioning LLC. I had told my daughter her father was gone. I had sat with her while she drew pictures of him with angel wings for a 2nd grade class project. I had answered her questions in the careful, gentle way the grief counselor had suggested, tending to her loss like something fragile, and he had been 40 minutes away running a cash business in Sugarland. Patricia took the recording to the Harris County District Attorney's office, along with everything else we had assembled. She also filed a civil suit the same day. The DA's office moved faster than I expected. Patricia told me later that cases involving fraudulent death certificates tend to generate urgency because of the number of agencies and statutes they implicate: social services, probate court, law enforcement records. They picked Derek up at the Sugarland building on a Wednesday morning. They arrested Terrence at his apartment in Stafford the same hour. My in-laws were brought in for questioning that afternoon. I was at work when Patricia texted me. I stepped into a supply closet and read the message twice. Then I finished my shift because Imani needed me to keep showing up. The legal process took the better part of a year. Derek's attorney tried several angles, including arguing that the presumptive certificate had been a misunderstanding and that he had intended to come forward once his business situation stabilized. The recording ended that argument fairly quickly. He was convicted on 3 counts of fraud, 1 count of identity-adjacent scheme related to the LLC structure, and a related charge tied to the debt collection arrangement. His parents cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges and were ordered to repay every dollar I had given them, totaled with interest. The amount came back to me as a certified check that I held in my hands for a long time before I deposited it. Terrence received a lesser charge for his role as a knowing accomplice and was sentenced to probation. The thing I was not prepared for was telling Imani. She was 7 by then, old enough to understand more than I wanted her to have to understand. I did it the way the counselor helped me plan, slowly, in pieces, over several conversations, in language honest enough to be real, but shaped carefully enough not to shatter her. I told her that her father had made choices that hurt people. I told her that the people he hurt most were us. I told her that none of it was her fault and none of it was mine, and that the people who love her have not gone anywhere. She was quiet for a long time after the first conversation. Then she asked me if she still had to display the angel wings drawing at Grandparents' Day. I told her she could make a new one. She made one with me in it instead, holding her hand. She showed it to her class, and her teacher sent me a photo of it on the wall. I sold the house Derek and I had bought together and moved Imani and myself into a townhouse closer to my mother. It is smaller, and the backyard is just a concrete patio, but the light in the mornings comes through the kitchen window at exactly the right angle, and it lands on the table where we eat breakfast. And sometimes I sit there before Imani wakes up, and I drink my coffee, and I feel something I had forgotten was still possible. I feel okay. Not happy in the uncomplicated way I was happy before any of this, but okay in the real way, the way that has weight to it, that knows what it cost. I work the same shift. I still drive a practical car, but I am not working doubles on weekends anymore. That money is mine now. I put some of it toward Imani's education account every month, a different kind of deposit than the ones I used to make, one that is building something instead of disappearing into a lie. People who know what happened ask me sometimes how I missed it. How did I pay for 3 years without questioning it? The honest answer is that grief is not a thinking state. Grief is a surviving state. You do the next thing, and you hold the story together with whatever you have, because the alternative, believing that the person you loved most chose this, planned this, watched you mourn from a safe distance, and felt nothing is not a thought you can hold and still function. I was not naive. I was broken. There is a difference. What I know now is this: if someone you love dies, and the circumstances leave any room for doubt, you ask the questions anyway. You ask them kindly, and you ask them quietly. But you ask them, not because you expect the worst, because you owe it to yourself to know. And if a little girl in your neighborhood ever stops skipping and looks you in the eye and says something that does not make sense, you stop, you listen, you let it be possible. Destiny knocked on my door last Easter. She brought me a card she had made herself, crayon on construction paper, because her mother had told her that she had helped me somehow, and she was proud of it. I have it on my refrigerator. It says, in large, uneven letters, "Miss Sandra, you are very brave." I think about that sometimes when the mornings are hard. I think about how the truth found me through the most ordinary door, a child's voice, a gap-toothed kid running after her dog, saying what she saw because she did not yet know she was supposed to protect adults from the truth. I am grateful for that. I am grateful that the lie had a small enough crack for honesty to find its way through. Imani asked me recently if she could call my mother Grandma instead of just Gran. She said she wanted someone to be her grandma the regular way, somebody who actually showed up. I said yes. I said absolutely yes.